Hello again, everybody. This is Thomas Hartnett Russell from the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority. Welcome to the fourth video that I have recorded now for the program year 2021 EAP training module. This is going to be a short session, and this is just going to be a quick review of the CARES Act. As many of you will likely remember, the CARES Act funding was rolled out in the middle of program year 2020 and will be extending through the end of 2021. So it's going to cross program years and will function alongside and concurrent with our regular LIHEAP year. And there are just a few things I want to review about CARES Act and how it works and why it works that way. Just as a review. So this should hopefully not be anything new to anyone. And with that said, sorry, didn't have my slideshow set up yet, so I'm setting that up now. All right, and I am going to share my screen and we will get into it. All right, so everyone should hopefully see my slideshow here. So once again, we are reviewing the CARES Act. I'm going to start with just a little bit of background. So the World Health Organization had declared the novel coronavirus disease 2019, henceforth referred to as COVID-19 outbreak, a public health emergency of international concern on January 30th of 2020. The very next day, on January 31st of 2020, Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar declared COVID-19 a public health emergency for the United States. And then on March 6th of 2020, Governor Eric Holcomb of Indiana declared COVID-19 a statewide public health disaster emergency. As of today, today being September 2nd, this declaration has been renewed until October 2nd, 2020. I do recognize that that is a different date than what is in the manual they distributed. At the time that I updated the manual, the information in the manual, it had been actually scheduled to lapse today on September 2nd. But a couple days after I finished revising the manual, Governor Holcomb did issue a new executive order that extended the state of emergency until October 2nd. And then on March 27th, President Trump signed the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or CARES Act, into law. It became Public Law 116-136. And again, that was on March 27th. And of course, the CARES Act is a very large economic relief and stimulus bill, has a lot of different elements to it. But the one that is relevant to us and that we are going to be focusing on is that it provided $900 million in supplemental funding to LIHEAP. That did go through an allocation process with Congress. And as a result of that, Indiana received just shy of $17 million. To be specific, we received $16,991,924. So we received official notice of that funding on May 8th. We did know that there was going to be some different requirements with this funding that was going to differ from our usual regular program year funding. And so we had to wait until we received that guidance from the HHS before we could create the agreements. We got those created. We had to run them through our legal department. And then we were finally able to distribute those funds to the LSP network on June 12th of 2020. And again, that CARES Act funding is valid until September 30th, 2021. So while we did get to start administering it during program year 2020, a lot of it is going to be administered during program year 2021. And HHS, in their guidance for the CARES Act, did keep it following the structure of the block grant, where grantees have a lot of latitude to decide on their own how they are going to administer it. And what we did in state of Indiana was we looked at what the overall thrust of the CARES Act was, what the purpose of the legislation was, and we saw that CARES Act was largely focused on the economic fallout, specifically with regards to employment and things like that. And so we decided that in our administration of CARES Act, we were going to try to hew as closely to that focus as possible. And so the way we are administering the CARES Act is it's going to provide an additional one-time $350 benefit to any LIHEAP-eligible household that can demonstrate that it experienced a partial or total loss of employment income as a direct result of the pandemic. Now, that benefit can be awarded basically in 3 different ways. You can take it as a single $350 lump benefit, and you can give that all to the electric, all to the heating, or it may be split between the electric and the heating utilities evenly, resulting in 2 $175 benefits. And this would be at the discretion of the client, not at the discretion of the LSP. We do need the client to decide how they would like to receive this benefit, and that determination, the client's preference, should be documented within case notes, just for accountability and transparency. We did want to streamline it as much as possible for the LSP network, so we decided that having just these 3 different scenarios and not allowing more specific splits, say like $225 to one and $125 to the other, we thought that was going to be getting too much into the weeds and require too much back and forth and too much administration on the actual execution of it. So we tried to streamline it for you. One thing I do want to bring up is clients who heat with biofuels or who have one or both utilities included in their rent, and so who usually get at least a portion of their benefit through direct payments, are still eligible to receive direct payments through the CARES Act funding. Now, it is allowable and perhaps even preferable for LSPs, for instance, in cases with people who heat with biofuels or with clients who have one of their utilities in the rent but not the other. It is perfectly acceptable for the LSP to encourage the client to put the entire $350 benefit towards a utility that is actually paid to a vendor rather than as a direct pay benefit. However, we are not allowed to compel or require that. The most we can do is strongly encourage that. So please keep that in mind. Okay, moving on to the actual eligibility requirements. In order to qualify for CARES Act supplemental benefit, a household applicant, or an applicant household rather, first of all, must meet the regular general eligibility requirements for EAP. Because this funding is being administered through a LIHEAP grant, they need to meet those basic LIHEAP requirements. And in addition to that, there is the additional requirement of the household must demonstrate that a member has experienced a direct economic impact in the form of loss of employment income. And that might be in the form of an involuntary layoff or an involuntary reduction of hours during the timeline of the Indiana public health emergency. That loss of employment income may be documented. The preferable documentation would be by using our updated Appendix N, request for earnings statement, which would be completed and signed by an employer representative. If you're not able to get that, a signed statement that has been written and signed by a supervisory level representative of the employer and is on employer letterhead would be the next most preferable documentation. And finally, if you can't get any of those, you can have the applicant household member sign a self-certification that they did experience a loss of employment or reduction of employment as a result of the public health emergency. However, if you do need to use that, then you should be documenting that you did try to get the other two pieces of documentation and document in case notes why or how those efforts failed. And in order to qualify for this benefit, that employment loss must have occurred during the governor's declaration of statewide public health disaster emergency. So once again, I believe that started on March 6th, and as of right now is going to be extending through October 2nd, although that may be extended further. Moving on to the drastic loss of income policy, which I did mention in one of the earlier videos that we'd be reviewing that during this training session. So in response to COVID-19, many of you may remember that IHCDA issued a policy guidance refining our existing drastic loss of income policy. And essentially, one of the big things of it was the original drastic loss of income policy only applied if there was a total loss of income. We could not apply a drastic loss policy to a reduction in hours. And in the wake of COVID-19, we actually changed this to allow it to apply to a household member who has a reduction of hours due to COVID-19. And essentially, what we would want in that case is we would want that Appendix N to be filled out by the employer, basically certifying that the reduction of hours did happen and did happen as a result of changes in operations due to the pandemic. And on that Appendix N, there is a space for the employer to indicate what the expected average weekly rate is. And hopefully the employer has filled that out. If so, what you would need to do in order to get 3 months of that income is take that weekly rate and multiply it by 13. Drastic loss of income may also be applied to self-employed persons if they have been unable to maintain their business during the public health crisis. Now, it's important to note that this applies only to registered businesses that are registered with the Secretary of State or with the Indiana Department of Revenue that they pay taxes on. This does not apply to people who are working undocumented odd jobs or freelance work. We need to be able to verify that this business is an actual entity that exists. Preferred documentation for self-employed persons claiming drastic loss of income would be a formal written and signed statement on business letterhead. If the applicant's business does not have letterhead, then a self-certification would be acceptable. If the household member is receiving unemployment benefits, then remember that those benefits must be included in any forward projections. And that does include any federal PUA or pandemic unemployment assistance. Many of you most likely remember that there was a PUA in addition to the Indiana unemployment. There was a federal PUA of $600 per week. That expired, I want to say, end of July, but it did kind of impact eligibility for a lot of folks towards the end of our program year. But essentially, the way our policy is written, if we're going to count unemployment, we need to count all the unemployment. So I know that there are a couple of bills floating around that propose PUA in some form or another. As far as I know, none of them are calling for the $600 a week. But even though there's no PUA right now, we wanted to have this policy on the books so that if PUA does come back, we don't have to issue a policy guidance reminding everyone that that needs to be included. We wanted it to already be in our policy. Remember, this has always been part of our drastic loss of income policy, but bears repeating. Whenever you are calculating income, even if the client household, the applicant household tells you up front that they did experience a loss of income due to COVID-19, you must always calculate your income, your household income, using traditional methods first, which means you need to look at the most recent 3 consecutive months. And you only invoke that drastic loss policy and project forward if the household is over income using those traditional calculation methods. Once again, this is consistent with the existing policy. This is not something that has changed. And just as a reminder, because a lot of this is tied in with Indiana's public health disaster emergency declaration, you can always check the status and dates of that by reviewing the governor's executive orders online. There is a website up there on that slide. As I said, currently the state of emergency is scheduled to stay in effect until October 2nd. It is very feasible that that could be extended out even further. So whenever you want to check on that, you can always just go to www.in.gov/2384.htm, and that will link you to all of the governor's executive orders, and you can look at the most recent executive orders to see when is currently scheduled to expire. And finally, I just wanted to go over the CARES Act budget. The CARES Act budget is essentially a streamlined version of the 2020 budget as opposed to the 2021 budget. Because if you have not already watched the 2021 budget training video, then you may not be aware that there has been a change to how we're doing the budgeting for this year. So it is a streamlined version of the 2020 budget. All LSPs may allocate up to 8.5% of total expenditures of CARES Act benefit to their eligibility admin line item. Once again, that is based on expenditures, not necessarily on your award. So if you end up underspending on your award, but you max out that 8.5%, you may actually at closeout end up being over. And if you are over on that 8.5% when you close out, then there will be a payback required. And this is just because of OMB requirements regarding these federal awards. And then in addition to your admin, the entire remainder of the award would go to those direct benefits. For CARES Act, we're not going to have crisis benefits. We just have one class of benefits. It's just that flat $350 for anyone who qualifies. So we're not going to be doing any technology or direct program expenses, no Assurance 16, no emergency services, and no emergency repair and replacement out of the CARES Act funding. So it's nice and simple and streamlined, just that admin line and your benefits line. And so that is it. I'm going to stop sharing that second screen here. Okay, sorry, my computer was acting up a little bit there, but we are back. So hopefully all of that was just a review for everyone. There's nothing new in the presentation that I just gave you, but I do want to remind everyone, as I said earlier, it is a one-time only benefit, and we did start administering it during program year 2020, which means that if you have an applicant household who comes in and they give you documentation that one of their members did experience some sort of income loss, employment-related income loss as a result of COVID-19, yes, they may qualify for the CARES Act benefit, but you do need to go back to program year 2020 and ensure that they did not already receive that benefit, because we are only giving it once for each household for the entire award period, which spans 2 program years. So that's the one little hiccup in here, I think, that complicates things slightly. But other than that, we try to make this as simple as possible for everyone to administer. We will be happy to take any questions on this during the Q&A sessions. Once again, those Q&A sessions will be recorded and posted so that everyone can review them and get the same information from them. And I do look forward to I do look forward to those Q&A sessions. I look forward to being able to talk to everyone and get everyone's feedback and hear what everyone's thinking, because I know I've already said it before on other videos, but doing it this way and just talking to a screen without getting any feedback and any response from anyone is really, really weird. So I will be talking to everyone soon. I have another video to record after this, and I hope everyone is doing well and staying safe and healthy. Thank you.